Today we're making St. Patrick's Day themed cake pops. I'm going to break down all the necessary steps needed to make each one you see here. Here's a quick drive-by of all the items you'll need, from the cake to the frosting, to the type of chocolate I use and where I get my sprinkles, to the items I use throughout this whole cake pop making process. If you're interested in knowing how I made this cake pop display, stick around. I'll be sharing all of my tips and tricks to making cake pops to help you succeed in making your very own display. To get started, we're going to need a white-based cake mix. If you'd prefer a yellow cake mix, that's fine, just keep in mind, yellow cake might be a little harder to dye green, so try to stick with a whiter cake mix. We're also going to need a matching frosting. With the frosting, we can be slightly more flexible. If you'd rather use a cream cheese frosting, that would also work if you're not a big fan of vanilla. Whatever cake you end up choosing, follow the baking directions on the back of the box. Whichever flavor cake you end up choosing, follow the baking directions on the back of the box. To dye the cake green, you have two options. I prefer to use gel food coloring, a brand such as AmeriColor. Gel food coloring is a much more concentrated dye, meaning you only need to use a small amount to achieve the same color intensity as you would if you were using regular food coloring, which usually requires a lot more dye to get the desired results. For example, I'm pretty sure at some point you've tried to dye something red, and no matter how much red food coloring you've added in, you've only ever ended up with a dark pink shade. That's frustrating, and I feel your pain, which is why I always recommend using gel food coloring. Unfortunately for me, I've used up all of my green gel food coloring, so we're gonna have to use the regular stuff. Yes, at this stage, our cake mix looks a little like vomit. It'll look more green after we've baked our cake. Whenever I'm making cake pops, I like to bake my cake in a 9x13-inch baking dish lined with foil. I don't spray it with anything or wipe it down with butter. I just pour the batter directly into the foil-lined baking dish. We're gonna bake this according to the directions on the back of the box. Once it's done, we're going to carefully take it out and let it sit on the counter until it's completely cooled. See, this is why I like lining my pans with foil. No mess, nothing to scrub later. The transition is so smooth, but I assure you I did wait for the cake to completely cool. Once it is, we're going to transfer it to a bowl and break it down. To do this, you can either use your hands or grab a potato masher and start mashing. Whatever gets the job done. Once your cake has been reduced to a pile of crumbs, it's time for the frosting. I'm going with this container of vanilla. Brand is not a deciding factor here. Use whatever flavor and brand is your favorite. Same goes for the cake. Brand won't make or break this project. We're gonna need a couple scoops of this stuff. You want enough frosting in your cake to hold its shape after you've rolled it into a ball. If it crumbles, you need more frosting. If it seems too sticky or wet, then you might have added too much frosting. I mixed those two big scoops in and then added some more after I determined that texture wasn't quite right. I end up showing you later just how much frosting is left in the container. I don't know why I didn't show it here, that would have been better, but I do later on. To measure out each cake pop, grab your cookie scooper. This one is about 1.5 tablespoons, I think. There is a link down below if you want the exact same one. We're gonna roll this into a ball like so. If you've added enough frosting, it should hold its shape and look nice and smooth like this. It almost has the same consistency as Play-Doh, but perhaps a little softer. Repeat the same process, scoop your cake, roll it into a ball, and place it on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. Now you can do this over and over, scoop and roll as you go, or you can do what I'm doing and scoop out all of your cake pops all at once and then roll them after. Aha, here's the leftover frosting. How much you will use will depend on how moist your cake is, so don't be discouraged if you end up using more or less than what I used. Okay, we're gonna set this in the fridge to firm up for about 30 minutes. While that's in the fridge, let's go over the next step. Okay, we're gonna need a place for the cake pops to set once we've dipped them in chocolate. For this, we need either a cake pop display, such as this one. I picked this up from Hobby Lobby in their cake decorating aisle. It was $6.99 if you're curious. If you'd rather not spend that much money, you can use a floral foam block like this one here. For our chocolate, I'm going with these melting candies purchased from Hobby Lobby. In my opinion, they're the most affordable and easiest to work with. The best brand of melting candies to work with, in my opinion, are the Ghirardelli brand, but that is on the more expensive side, so keep that in mind. To a bowl, we're going to add in half of the bag and add in 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. Why are we adding in vegetable oil? Well, I'm glad you asked. We're going to need to thin out this chocolate a bit so it's easier to dip with, and adding vegetable oil will do just that. We're going to microwave this for about 1 to 1.5 minutes minutes, stirring every 20 seconds. It's important to stop and stir your chocolate so it doesn't seize or burn. I actually filmed this next part the next day, so as you can see, I covered my cake balls with a single layer of paper towels and foil to keep them from drying out in the fridge. The paper towel was used to keep any condensation from dripping all over the cake balls. Okay, it looks like our chocolate is mostly melted. There are a few chunks left, but for right now this is perfect for dipping our cake pop sticks in. Since our cake balls have been sitting in the fridge, they formed a little flat bottom, and we're gonna stick our stick right in the center of that flat bottom like so. As you do, you should be able to feel a little resistance on the other end. This will help you sort of gauge when you need to stop before you pop out the other side. We don't want to do that. Repeat the same process until all of the cake balls have sticks in them. Since these are still pretty cool from the fridge, the chocolate should harden fairly quickly. And since this process will naturally take a while, your chocolate is also going to start cooling down. When we're ready to dip our cake pops, we're going to toss them back in the microwave for just a few more seconds to heat it back up so it's nice and melted. No more than 20 seconds. To dip our cake pops, I like to use these Irish coffee cups, but really any tall cup will work. Grab your cake pop and give it a dip. To get the excess chocolate off your cake pop, I like to tap the stick on the edge of the cup like so. This helps shake off any extra chocolate that would otherwise drip down your cake pop stick and onto your counter, creating a huge mess. Now, if your cake pop is still cold from the fridge, the chocolate should start to set up fairly quickly. Keep in mind though, if your cake pop is very cold and your chocolate is very warm, even if the chocolate hardens on the cake pop, the temperature difference on the inside might cause your chocolate to crack later on. To avoid this, it's best to work with an almost room temperature cake pop. You'll notice throughout the decorating process, especially when I use the sprinkles, I'm almost turning the cake pop around and spinning it around in my fingers like a weirdo. This is of course on purpose. Until the chocolate fully sets, you want to keep that cake pop stick moving so it doesn't drip down the stick. Okay, now take a look at this cake pop. It's a little deformed, and that's because we're a few dips in and our chocolate is starting to firm back up in the cup. No problem, that's an easy fix. Just reheat your chocolate in the microwave for another 20 seconds. You won't need to thin it out, we've already done that, it just needs to be reheated. Now that we've dipped about half of our cake pops, it's time to finish decorating this set. I've placed the remaining chocolate in a small piping bag. For our gold sprinkles, I'm going with this fine gold sanding sugar. I picked this up from Walmart, but if you can't find it there is a link down below in the video's description box. Cut a small opening in the tip of your piping bag and test out your line, making sure the size is to your liking. Grab your cake pop and swipe on some lines like so. While the chocolate is still wet, sprinkle on your gold sanding sugar. What do you think? It's pretty, huh? Repeat the same process until all of your cake pops are decorated. Ta-da! We're looking fancy. Yes, we are. While those finish setting, let's work on the green cake pops. Same process as before, we're going to use about half of the bag, add in 1 tablespoon of odorless, flavorless oil, microwave for about 1 to 1.5 minutes, stirring every 20 seconds so the chocolate doesn't seize or burn. To decorate these, I'm going with these 2 types of sprinkles. I purchased both from Hobby Lobby. The one on the left are nonpareils, and the one on the right is sanding sugar. With sprinkles, you kind of have to work fast if you intend to cover the entire thing in sprinkles. We want to shake off as much of the excess chocolate as possible and still have a wet surface for the sprinkles to stick to. I'll insert a clip here from a previous tutorial where I didn't move fast enough. Grab your sprinkles and start sprinkling. As you can see here, I wasn't fast enough. This little section here dried so fast now I have a bald spot. It's okay, it still looks good and I'm pretty sure nobody's gonna notice but us. Once you're ready, shake your sprinkles all over your cake pop. If you're wondering why I'm spinning the cake pop around like a crazy person, it's because the chocolate is still really wet and hasn't started to fully set yet. Normally the cake pops are still a little bit cold from the fridge, which would help set the chocolate faster, but these are pretty much room temperature at this point, so it's taking the chocolate a bit longer to set. Nonpareil sprinkles are a bit bouncy, so I switched to a bowl instead of a plate, as they're quite annoying to clean up if they're all over the place. On a personal note, I don't particularly like nonpareils. I think they're hard and not particularly fun to bite into, but they are pretty and they're eye-catching. Kids, I'm sure, couldn't care less. If I was offered one as a kid, I'm almost positive it wouldn't even be on my radar. When you're a kid, sprinkles are sprinkles. Now when it comes to sanding sugar, that one's more my speed. It's not nearly as life-altering when biting into this cake pop. Once all of your cake pops are dry, it's time to display them. Grab a large mug. I purchased these 2 gnome mugs from Home Goods. In the center of the mug, I stuffed a floral foam block inside and then arranged the cake pops all over. Actually, my mom did this for me. I was completely hands-off for this part. To get the taller cake pops in the center, she used some clear plastic straws and then cut them to size. And then she set the cake pop stick in the straw. Quite a neat trick. Well, that was a fun project. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments section and I'll do my best to answer them to the best of my knowledge. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out, and I'll see you all in the next video.